We could have had an animated version of Cats, and instead we got this.
Jones in white
Steven Spielberg's name was attached to 2019's version of Cats as executive producer, but it wasn't the first time he was involved in bringing Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical to the big screen. In 1989, with the success of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Spielberg, after parting ways with animator and producer Don Bluth over creative differences, which is another story altogether, formed Amblimation, a collaboration with Universal Pictures. The company would go on to produce 3 films, the sequel to An American Tail, Fievel Goes West, We're Back, a dinosaur story, and Balto, before folding in 1997 over box office failures. But before all that would happen, Spielberg had his eyes on a rather ambitious project.
It's the opening night of Cats, and the curtain goes up in 15 minutes.
T.S. Eliot's collection of poems matched with Andrew Lloyd Webber's music seemed like an ideal fit for animation. Back in the late 1940s, Walt Disney actually approached T.S. Eliot about buying the rights to his poems. But Eliot refused, feeling that a Disneyfied version of his poetry would make things, in his words, too pretty. By the time Andrew Lloyd Webber came onto the scene, T.S. Eliot had passed away, his widow handed over the rights to Webber pretty willingly, and the rest is Broadway history. At the time Spielberg launched Amblimation, Disney was in the midst of the 90s renaissance. We're talking The Lion King, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. But despite Spielberg being a household name, his newly founded animation studio didn't quite carry the same weight. Fievel Goes West opened to poor box office numbers and mixed reviews, all while Disney was soaring with some of the most memorable films in its animation canon. By 1990, with films like Jaws, E.T., and the Indiana Jones franchise, Steven Spielberg was the name in Hollywood. And similarly, with productions like Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and The Phantom of the Opera, Andrew Lloyd Webber was the name in musical theater. These two juggernauts naturally formed a friendship and a professional relationship that early on involved talks of bringing Cats to the big screen. Cats, based on T.S. Eliot's 1939 poem collection, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, landed on Broadway in 1982. It won numerous awards and became a commercial success, grossing $3.5 billion by 2012. After the release of Fievel Goes West, Spielberg took the department heads of Amblimation to see a production of Cats in London. Fievel Goes West directors Simon Wells and Phil Nibelink were brought on to helm the stage-to-screen adaptation. Visual artists Hans Bacher and Shelley Page, who worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, were brought on to develop the film's look. The idea at the time was to create a distinct look inspired by German Expressionism that would mix scale live models for the sets with traditional animation. Spielberg also wanted to take some liberties with the material, envisioning it taking place during the Blitz in London in World War II. Now, anyone who has seen Cats on stage knows that perhaps the number one critique about the production is its lack of plot. Webber takes a direct approach in adapting Eliot's poems, which are really just a succession of introductions of various cats. The film adaptation hit its first snag when studio heads at Universal and producers, including Spielberg, demanded that there be more of a distinct plot and through line. Along with that were the usual questions: the length of the animated film versus the 2+ hour stage production, how human the cats should look, who, if anyone, should be the main characters. With major rewrites needed, the project was put on hold after 6 months of work, and the crew turned their attention to the much more manageable Balto. All the while, Cats was proving to be a major moneymaker on stage, and studio heads weren't willing to let go of the project so easily. Spielberg moved Amblimation Studios to LA, and the project was rebooted under a new team. At this time, the press officially reported on the production with an anticipated release year of 1997. British playwright Tom Stoppard was brought on to write the screenplay, but even with his talent, the screenplay still struggled to balance the wall-to-wall songs of the stage musical with the need for a plot, and Andrew Lloyd Webber went head-to-head with studio executives, arguing that the film adaptation should honor the stage production and stick to it as much as possible. The final nail in the coffin came when Balto hit theaters in 1995 up against the very groundbreaking Toy Story, rendering it as Amblimation's third straight flop and bringing the ambitious company to its end. Spielberg at this point had more or less lost interest and turned his focus to DreamWorks Animation and their current project, The Prince of Egypt. When Amblimation folded in 1997, Cats went with it. After that, the rights to Cats were bought by Universal, and it wouldn't be until 2013 when a new iteration of the material, the nightmare that we all came to know of, began to take shape.